Hello everyone and welcome back to the HTP support channel. Today we're going to do a video that's going to be just for current users, teachers, administrators that used the system last year where they've already created classes and collected data. This is specifically for them. It will go over how you start the new year. So once you log into your portal, again, this is done from the portal, not from the app, you're going to select classes. And you'll see, let's say that all of these classes were used last year. So what I need to do is I need to archive all my last year classes. You can always bring them back. So if I go up here to ID, select that button, then all my classes are going to be selected. Then I'm going to go up here to the top right, and I'm going to select Archive. Takes a couple seconds because there's a lot of classes in here. The faster it'll go, the faster if you have less classes. So now you can see that I'm looking at active status. No classes are active. I go here to select archive status. Then all the classes that I just archived are showing. I could always bring them back if I wanted to. So let's say I don't want these classes archived. So I just select the ID button again and unarchive. And they're all going to go back to active. It'll show in a minute here, it'll show no archived classes. Select active. And these are the active classes. So I'm going to go back again and archive all my classes. So once you archive all the classes from last year, then you're going to go up, you're still in the classes section. You can see there's no active classes now. I'm going to go up here to Add New. And you're just going to basically fill out the new class for this year, just like you did last year, where you're going to name the class, select the school, grade, yourself as the instructor, start date, end time, start and end time, show you the class duration. Class days, I usually, kids, it's a rotating schedule. I usually would select Monday through Friday. Type of class, as you know, there it's going to be, heart rate steps, heart rate and VPA and steps. And this is actually what you're going to be displaying on your big board. But all the data is collected no matter what you choose here. And then the activity, you got to select something in there. Hopefully it's something that would apply to you. Zone type, usually middle school or high school usually use 5 zones. If you want to use 3 zones, that's perfectly okay again, but you could display it. If you choose the 5 and you're looking at a report, you could display it as 3 or vice versa. Obviously, sensor set, and then display here is going to be what when the kids look at the big board, the display is either going to be by sensor number or nickname. Very seldom would you use student name for privacy reasons. And as you know, the last button here is Save Highest Heart Rate. So if that's toggled on, then if say a student has a heart rate of 160 and they work out and they get it up to 200, then it automatically changes their highest heart rate, changes to 200 now, and all their 5 zones or 3 zones are based on a heart rate of 200. So the zones are relative to whatever the max heart rate is for that student. So that's an option that you either have that toggled on or you can leave it off. It's only up to you, and then you save the class. So that's, but you did it last year. Shouldn't be any questions there. If you do have any questions about creating your classes, let me know. So I'm just going to go back here and I'm going to I think what I'll do is I'll unarchive all of them. So they'll all be active now. So I just want to emphasize one more thing. When you're creating your classes, every class will have this ID. And as you know, when you do your student import, the last column it says class ID. It is optional, but if you put this ID into each row for all the students, it will automatically import them not only into the system, but it will import them into a class that's listed here. And so if they were in a class last year that was, say, 678, and now you're importing them into 679, they'll all go and show up in that class at the start of the new year. So just pay attention to that class ID, and that's how you are going to enter kids into each of the classes. There's also an option of entering students manually into different classes. So if I go to class, and I'm going to go over here to edit. If I hit edit the class, you'll see there's three tabs at the top: class details, students, and goals. If I select on students, because let's say I didn't have any students in here, then I could add an existing student, and all the students that are possible, I can add them in that way. So you could add students in manually if you want to do it that way. If you need to remove a class, you just click over here where it says remove from class. Don't forget, last year you had the option of creating goals. There's 4 options: MVPA minutes, MVPA percent, steps, and points. So that's kind of up to you if you want to have any goals. I would encourage you to focus on 2, which would be MVPA minutes or points. Percent is an option, and steps, those are the other two options. If you do steps, bear in mind that that's going to be calculated based on arm movement, if that's where you're wearing it. If you're on a stationary bike, you wouldn't get very many steps that way. You could wear the sensor on your ankle if you're on a stationary bike. That way there you would get steps that way. So that's totally up to you. So once you've got all your classes created now for the new year, now you've got to get the kids into the different classes. So I'm going to click on students. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to import the kids, the new kids or kids that are already in the system. I'm going to put them into new classes for this year. So I'm going to hit import here. And I'm going to download the template. Student import template. I'm going to go through it real quick again. I know you know it from last year. Okay, here it is here. So just quickly going over it to refresh from last year. First name. Oops, I got to get all the way over there. It's okay. Last name, first name. Pretty easy. Person ID is really the student ID. That is required. Your kids from last year, if you just use this, make sure you're using the same ID or they'll be in the system twice. So that's every school system has a student personal ID that is never used by any other student. So just make sure you're using that properly. And then use the username. Usually we encourage you to use the email address for the username. It is required. If you're not going to use email, you could put in the ID here where it says column D for username. Bear in mind that if the ID is less than 6 characters, there could be a problem. The username has to be at least 6 characters. Password, you could use the ID again for their password. Most kids will know their ID, so if they would log in, they would log in with their email address and password being their ID number. Everything else all the way over to date of birth is optional. So date of birth, just like last year, put that in. That is important to put in. It does affect calorie calculations. Nickname, that's an option. Gender, remember it's capital M, capital F, or capital O for other. Just make sure that is required. Grade says here it's an option, but I would highly encourage you to use grade and put the grade in there. Height and weight, you could always enter it in later, or you could have the kids log in and enter their own height and weight. However you want to do that, it's totally up to you, but it is optional. Max heart rate, again, that's optional. If you don't put anything in there, then what would happen is it would use the default formula that we have for the system. You can find the default formula in the input page. And then resting, you leave that blank. VT1, VT2, blank. This is important. R, where it says edit personal information. If you have a Y there, every single row, then when the kids do log in, if they do, then that will, what'll happen there is they'll be able to log in and change their personal information, height, weight, whatever, username. So that's totally up to you. It's kind of a teacher option. If you do put capital N there for every single row, then when the kids log in, they see their data, but they can't change any of their personal information. As last year, column S is at your school. Make sure it's in there correctly, just the way it's been placed into the portal. So if it's a little off, it won't. It'll give you problems on the import. And the last one, T here, is class. Class ID, we just discussed that when I was looking at classes. If you want the kids to go into their appropriate classes, then you would have the ID listed and say, if the ID was 1, it would be all the way down till the last student that was in 1, and then the next student down here would be, let's say, class ID 2 or whatever it is. So you could actually import all the kids at once, 6 different classes. As long as their ID is correct, then they're going to go into those classes. If you leave it blank, then they'll go into the system, or they'll be in the system, but they won't be assigned to any class. So that's kind of an overview of getting started for the new year with archiving your classes and importing your kids in for the new year and into their new classes. So I hope that helps. As always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email, call my cell, text me, whatever. I'm always available to give you any assistance that you may need. And I hope you have a great year and looking forward to talking to you at some point down the line. Take care.